What is up? Jason Tracy here. Just finished in the studio with my friend Stu Strahan. This is a must-listen episode, especially if you are in franchising, if you've been thinking about starting a business, if you've had a business in the past and it's failed, if you're a man and you're leading a business and you're stuck in your head about, is this going to fail and am I going to be able to support my family? This is a highly emotional, highly impactful episode that you must check out. What does it take to be a successful entrepreneur? A dangerous amount of coffee and a ton of grit. My name is Jason Tracy, and every week I interview business leaders to share their stories, life lessons, failures, and advice with you. Welcome to Coffee and Grit. Let's go. Are you ready? You guys, did you get your coffee this morning? Are you grinding it out? Are you out there making a difference? You know what, I just a real quick little story. Last night I was sitting on LinkedIn kind of scrolling through, and I came across a client that I worked with, a person I worked with, back in 2019. And it's really cool. What if you could see your future self? What if you could see yourself, like you're sitting here right now saying, man, my life sucks. I'm not making the impact I want to make. I'm not, you're down in the dumps. You don't think you're making any of the right decisions. Maybe you're stuck and you're not seeing your story, your narrative clearly. And that was the story of this young man I was working with. And man, I'm so proud of this guy. He came to me because he was stuck. He didn't think he was making a difference in his life. And I saw this young man that was had the looks of a model, right? 25 years old. He had already had these amazing experiences, graduated from UCLA, was super smart, had got sent over to Saudi Arabia, built this awesome relationship. He's making this huge difference working for government agencies. And he sees himself stuck and not making a difference in the world. And he's telling me about how he has all these interests and he has no idea how they connect, but he wants to go and he wants to, he's really fascinated with space and he's really fascinated with the Arctic and he just has no idea how these things all come together. And as we worked on and just really understood his story and his narrative, I saw there's one moment, and I'll keep that between us, but there was one big epiphany that he had. And I think maybe we met one other time after that. And this guy has just been outgoing. He's the head of space innovation right now. He's out there just doing these incredible things, but he was just interviewed by this big space publication podcast. And it's so cool in retrospect to see this guy that didn't think he was making a difference, didn't think he was making an impact. We're now fast forward 5-6 years later, and he's checked off all the things that he said he wanted to do. And that thing that he talked about, he has all these interests. Oh my God, he found a way to tie them together. He's now an expert in the Arctic, in space, and he's been funded to go and to work on SpaceX and all these different crazy things. It's really, really awesome. But there was about 37 minutes into the podcast. The person was recapping this gentleman's life and said, you've been to all these places, you've had all these incredible experiences. And I think he's only probably 30 years old right now. He said, you've had all these crazy experiences. What would you tell somebody that wanted to go to embark on a career like yours? And he said, take action, just go out and do. He was like, I wasn't an expert until I became an expert. And I remember he was writing these stories and these articles on the Arctic. And he was like, I don't know what to do with these. I don't even know what's going on. And he just kept writing them until he became an expert on the Arctic. And so just really freaking cool. Go out there. Don't beat yourself up for what you see you're not doing. Really get clear on what story and what difference you want to make in the world, and just go out there and just do it. Be like Nike and just do it. And take David's advice, man. It's really awesome. But to get into our episode, I've got a really cool cat in the studio with me today. I've got Stu Strahan. He's the owner of 2 Fastest Labs locations here in Michigan, one in the Brighton Howell area, another one in Ann Arbor. And we're going to talk about franchising and about the world of drug testing and DNA testing and some really cool stuff there. But first, I really want to get into, who is Stu Strahan, the man, the myth, the legend?
You were too kind. Yeah, that was a heck of an intro. I thought you were talking about me when you said a face of a model. I've been told my whole life I got a face for a shoe model, so I thought we were going someplace with that. But then I suddenly quickly realized you were talking about somebody else. But yeah, sounds like a heck of a guy. I'd like to meet him. But anyways, thanks for your kind words. Looking forward to hanging out with you. We always have a great time. And Yeah, thanks for letting me come in today.
My pleasure. Again, it's I've always had really awesome conversations with you, and I mean that sincerely when I say I have a cool cat in here. Like every time, the very first time I met you, I had seen some social media posts and stuff like that. You had just started your business, and you've been hitting up some different like chamber events and stuff like that.
Right.
And I saw something about you on social media. I'm like, oh, I want to meet that guy. And then in one day, you had come to you were a guest at my SiriusNet, and then I seen you at a marketing mashup at the end of the night, and got a chance to talk to you and how you started your business, and kind of that story, which we'll talk about here a little bit today. And I'm like, man, I want to continue getting to know this guy. And so it's been cool over the last like year or so. We've been able to do that a little bit.
Yeah, absolutely. It's fun to run into different places, and sometimes I know you're going to be there, so I try to make sure I can get there. And other times it's been a great surprise to find you, and love to hang on your coattails and learn whatever I can whenever I'm around you. So I appreciate it.
I appreciate that. So, it's one of those cool things, like in thinking about whenever I think of any kind of local event, I think of you because you're at all those local events, and yet you started a business and you're not from this area, right?
No. Well, that's why I pretty much had to go to everything, because when we started the business, I had a couple ladies from the chamber ask me a while back, have you had any challenges? That's a fantastic question. I said, I started a business that I barely knew existed, in an industry I didn't know anything about, in a town I didn't know a single person. Other than that, yeah, it's been pretty easy. There was no challenges. So I figured the best way to get to meet people is to go where people are at. So we jumped in with the chambers, both of them, the Brighton and the Howell. And every time I go to a chamber event, I try to meet new people, get reacquainted, learn more, build more relationships with the people I've already been acquainted with. And it's been a heck of a ride the last year.
It's so awesome. I love these communities and how supportive they are to entrepreneurs. But it's one of those ways. And again, I love the domination aspect. And I feel like you're out there dominating because you're putting your face out there in so many places. But it goes more than just the face, is because, again, you're an awesome guy. And I think that people draw to you. And so I love seeing you out. And I love seeing your business growing. So.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, that's very kind gesture. I don't have time. I'm going to be turning 53 here pretty soon. I know most people, they start out and they get their business started in their 20s or whatever. And, I'm trying to get a lifetime worth of work done in the next 10 years. And, I got time to be sitting around wondering what I could be doing. I need to get out, be doing what I should be doing. And the more people I meet, the more people hopefully I can impress upon that it's not just about me and what I want to accomplish, but with our business, we're here to serve the community. We're in a very interesting business where people don't really necessarily want to line up at our door and come running in like we're selling candy and that kind of stuff. We don't have that fun atmosphere, so to speak, but we're in a unique industry where the service level has been poor at best, and we're definitely changing things. We're not reinventing the wheel with the drug and alcohol and the DNA testing, but we're doing things so differently on the service side of it that it's been pretty interesting. I was talking to a guy the other day, told him, we love the Google reviews, and he says, wait a minute. He says, I'm here to do a urine-based test. Why would I leave a 5-star review? So that's a fantastic question. I appreciate that. I said, but, I think you've probably noticed we do things different here. So my daughter was working there, and I was in there. I said, we treat people well. I've been on the other side for so many years. I've been in and out of so many different clinics. And the going theme is they pretty much treat you like an inmate and keep you waiting for hours. We don't want to do that here. We want to treat people the way we would like to be treated. We want to love on people. And I'm that way. My wife's that way. My daughter's that way. My son is that way. He's not necessarily involved in the day-to-day operations, but he's a part owner. And we just love to take care of people and provide a service and treat people better than they would expect to be treated.
As you know, I talk about a lot being the difference making. And I came from an industry, a franchise as well, but I came from an industry that was not very highly rated. It's from the cellular industry, and there's studies and NPS studies where people said they would really literally rather go spend their day at the airport than go into a cell phone store, and they just had horrible experiences. And I looked at that as it was a bad thing overall for the industry, but for me, it was a good thing because that was the problem. And that was my solution is like my locations, I turned them into the Cheers atmosphere. And that was kind of our model. Like when you come in, we're going to know your name. We're going to know your brother's name and we're going to know your mom's name because we now are taking care of all your family. And when you come in, you don't have to explain your problem over and over again. And when you come in with a problem, you're going to leave feeling relieved and we're going to take that problem, we're going to help you solve that problem. We're going to help you come up with a solution, whatever it is. And so when we're that counteractive of what the rest of the industry was, that was how we made our difference. It was how we became franchisee of the year. It was how we grew our company. And so I can really relate to what you're doing because you talk about coming into an industry where, drug testing, not real warm and fuzzy.
No, typically not.
I've been there with working with companies and you go into that spot and you're waiting there for hours and, and it's not a nice place.
No, typically not. Yeah, a lot of clinics you walk in, it's very cold, it's kind of sterile, not necessarily the cleanest place, definitely not welcoming. People are so surprised, and I love it when I'm actually out in the lobby when people come in because I love to grab the door for them when I know they're coming, welcome them in, and whether I can hold the front door or not, as soon as they get in, they're going to experience very different experience because my daughter will be there to welcome them or my wife or myself, and we like people. I know that's a strange concept in the service industry, but we actually like people, so... And it just kind of catches people off guard because, you walk into the typical clinics and one, you're not going to be welcome. There's not a smile waiting there for you. There's not, hey, how can I help you? What can we do? Like you said, there's always a problem to be solving. And we love to do that. And we love to do it in a happy, enthusiastic way because drug testing is just part of the way things work. Whether you're a CDL driver and you're required to do random tests on a regular basis or you just need a one-off for a new job that you're getting, it needs to be done. It's a very important part of the workforce. It's a very high-end thing for keeping a safe workplace. I love the idea of everybody having a safe work atmosphere for their employees, for their clients. And this is something that needs to be done. So why has it always been done so poorly and so with such a lack of service and enthusiasm? I mean, why can't you have fun doing everything we need to do? I guess is what it comes down to.
Yeah.
So.
Well, and it takes people like you that really do care about people and really do want to love on people and your family and the way you guys see things because there are so many people out there, no matter what the industry is, that are just doing a job. And even the people I see so many times, business people that want to be business owners and they'll go to a forum and they'll type in like, tell me what's the business I could open up right now where I could make the most amount of money. And if you're doing it just for that and there's no real care for the people, then right. It is just a job and those are objects coming in your door and you don't really care. It's all about the efficiency and, like how much money you're pulling in on each person and, except versus that person in the door.
Right. And, there's nothing wrong with wanting to do something for money. I mean, obviously
for sure.
that's what takes things to go around. And, I'm not going to lie. I wouldn't have been interested in this had I not been able to make some decent money.
Yes.
That being said, it's been really kind of cool to see the whole thing develop in the last 15, 16 months. And I think I mentioned to it last time we chatted that, I think I've realized that this is my calling. There's not a lot of people that can step into this industry and make it fun, make it interesting, while still keeping it professional, secure, have the integrity, keeping everything on the up and up, but realizing that there's a personal aspect in everything we do. Most places you go into, you just get treated like a number. They don't want you there. They just want to get you in and out as quick as they can. I love to interact with people. I love to treat them the way I want to be treated. I know I've mentioned that a couple of times, but I mean, that's what we're really all about. And it's just a good time to interact with people, lighten up the mood a little bit because most people walk in the door, they're pretty hesitant. Some people have done it before. Some people have never done it before. You don't know any idea what's happened in their life the last week. Mm-hmm. I know this may go a little bit deeper than just a drug test, but that's just the way we like to treat people. We have no idea what's happened in their life the last month. And we've had some interesting DNA tests that kind of tie in with that, with people finding out that, they had a long lost parent and they're coming in for a DNA test to basically prove that that was their dad for having to clean up the mess afterwards after they've spent their whole life without a parent. And then all of a sudden, when that person passes away, oh, by the way, this was your dad. We've had to do some DNA tests to kind of confirm that. And, we just want to treat people better than they expect to be treated. That's
really what it is treating people well. I see And I want to back up, and of course, this is a podcast for entrepreneurs. Of course, we're in this for the money.
Right.
We have to support our family. We have dreams. We have our own ambitions. We're not doing this just for the taking care of people. But when you can combine and marry those two things, when you do have that heart and you do care about people and you do see people and how to serve them, man, that's the people that I want to work with. Because and I call that's the people that are out there making a difference and wading through all the noise out there of people that are just doing things because it's a job, or they're just processing because this is just the way things are.
Yeah, there's a lot of people out there. And it's fun to us because we have people come in and on a daily basis, they say, well, I've never been treated like this before. And they do it with a smile on their face, so I take that as a compliment.
Yes. Yeah.
And you read their body language, whether it's a good thing or a bad thing. But obviously, we're not perfect. Every now and then a little hiccup happens. But the cool thing is you got a handful of people that are going to throw in everything they got to resolve any issues that come up. But yeah, it's just fun to have the interaction with people on a daily basis. Like I said, they come in not expecting a good time. They walk out with a smile on their face, leave a 5-star Google review. Who does that for a drug test? I mean, it's just such a weird concept for most people coming in there. And we take a lot of pride in working hard to do that. But we just love to love on the people.
And I love that with that story with that guy that said, why would I leave a 5-star review? Did he end up leaving a 5-star review?
I think he did.
Yeah.
So we have a little code on the counters. They can take a picture of that. So some of them, we're not really sure if they're leaving a review on the way out or if they're just take a picture and walk out and they're texting their wife to pick up groceries. I don't really know for sure.
They act like they're busy.
That's right. Yeah, I got that. So, and then of course, with my technology experience, I don't know what they're doing. They could be watching a video for all I know, but but we're getting a lot of them. We have a good time with it, and now we opened up in Ann Arbor, so things are going down there pretty good too. So we kind of had to divide and conquer. So my daughter Mackenzie, she's staying up here in Howell, Brighton, one of my wife's day-to-day operations down in Ann Arbor. So now I'm running back and forth fast as I can, trying to take care of people in the front door, both of them. So
there's two of them, but still only one Stu. So you're kind of
right,
like the wishbone in the
yes, kind of getting pulled in different directions. And then another cool thing that we've been working on recently was we've teamed up with a company doing some hiring events. So we've been heading up to Saginaw a couple of times a month, and so I got to round up some people because I don't have just bodies that are trained and ready to go sitting around the office. So I'm getting kind of creative. So that's added to the mix, which has been a lot of fun, but definitely a huge challenge. So I'll go up to Saginaw for a 10, 12-hour day with about 3 or 4 more people. So we're up there doing drug tests all day long for them, hiring 100 to 200 people at a time.
Wow.
And then, of course, that leaves Mackenzie and Christy at their locations with nobody to help answer the phones, nobody to help point them in different directions. But, it's a cool problem to have when things are starting to get so busy, you just can't quite keep up with everything. And as an entrepreneur, there's a threshold where you want to hire new people, but then there's a reality of, well, I still can't yet until we get to this point. So you just got to put your head down, plow through it, have a good time, and then see where you pop out on the other side.
Do you have that kind of earmarked as far as where you have to be as far as a production standpoint to hire somebody on, or?
Right. The corporate with Fastest Labs, they pretty much give you some numbers as a reference point. Once you're at this point on a monthly basis, that's when you really need to start getting a second person on hand, or a third person or fourth person, whatever the case may be, whatever the numbers are. Mm-hmm. 6 months in, we're continuing to grow every month, and it's been a blast, and we're kind of right there at the bottom of that threshold, but getting ready to pop over it. So we're definitely looking forward to where we're going in the next couple of months and get some more people in on a full-time basis instead of, we got a handful of people we work with for different events and some part-time stuff here and there. But that's a whole nother animal to conquer with, developing that culture where people want to come work for you. And again, in the drug testing world, we do hair tests, we do fingernail tests, we do the DNA tests, which are mostly like the buccal swabs in the mouth. But the good old tried and true, the most often test we do is a urine-based test. It takes a little bit to have people be excited about doing that for a living.
Great. Putting urine in a cup. Awesome. Yeah.
Yes. And when people walk in, hey, what can I help you with? Oh, I got to do a piss test. It's maybe a little more crude than I'd love to hear, but the reality of it.
That's what it is. Yeah.
That's what it is.
Yeah.
So you depend on what kind of group of people you're sitting in, whether you want to say that or not. And I try not to repeat it because I spent my life trying to behave. Well, pretend like I'm trying to behave. But anyway, so I want to be less crude than that. But But the reality is it takes a lot of work to create that environment where people want to be part of that, when what we do is basically collecting urine samples and then hair samples and DNA samples throughout the day. But we have a great time. Make the most out of everything that we do, and I think we're creating a culture right now, even though we're not in a place where we're adding on a bunch of full-time employees. We're going to be adding on some in the near future, and we got some prospects, people coming to us saying, hey, I'm going to hear about what you got going on over here. You seem like great people. You guys hiring yet? Well, let me get your name and number. We'll keep you in mind, and
that's how you do
we'll
it
talk
right
to you
there.
in the near future. So that's been kind of a fun process too.
It's awesome because like culture is internal and external, and when you're doing it right, and you have that mindset, and right now it's small, and you have the family, and you all have that that culture that you're building, but it's speaking externally to the people coming in and seeing what you're doing, or even as you're out and about in meeting people, shaking hands, doing the things in the communities, they can see it.
Yeah, I'm glad to hear that because I spent a lot of time out doing that stuff.
Yeah. It is like, when's it paying off, right? It's one of those things that you don't always see because you're in the tunnel doing the things, and,
Right.
and you don't necessarily see, kind of going back to my story with David a while at the beginning, like he's in this thing, and I saw very clearly this guy was going to dominate the world at some point, right? And like, he's like 25 and impatient, and like also doesn't see the value in what it is, like his stories. But like, you go out there and you do it,
Mm-hmm.
and it builds.
Yeah. So I love to hear stories about people like David. And there's a lot of people out there that say, oh, there's nobody out there under 30 years old that's doing anything. Like, whoa. Now, maybe not the overwhelming majority, but let me tell you about my son. Let me tell you what he's got going. Let me tell me about my daughter. Let me tell you about people like David. And it's just so fun. And I guess they get to shine even brighter when they're in their mid-20s, or I guess my kids now in their late 20s. Man, how old am I?
Like, how'd that happen, right?
That's right. But it's just so cool to brag about them when you're out and about meeting people. 'Cause,
It's so
somehow
cool.
you always end up talking about family. But there's a lot of young people out there that are working really hard, and they're going to definitely make some huge difference in the next upcoming years and stuff, with whatever business or in their personal life and everything. And it's just so fun to see that. Because I kind of joke around. People say, "Well, how long do you have to train an employee?" Well, the first one I've been training for about 39 years. The second one I've been training for 27 years. And that's the beauty of the family business. Which,
And then how long does Christy say she's been training you?
yeah, she might tell a different story.
And we're still in intensive training.
I got the mic. Don't give it to her. So, but, kind of speaking of that, it's pretty cool because, today is, I don't know if we're supposed to say this on the podcast, but St. Patrick's Day. I don't know how you guys do that with the dates and that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
But I know a lot of people equate that to different things with what they've done. And I don't even remember when I even realized it was St. Patrick's Day, but I do remember about 39 years ago on March 17th, it was the third Monday of the month. And I stayed after school, hung out for a couple hours. I'm sure I pretended like I was doing some homework, maybe I had baseball practice, whatever. Then I walked to this beautiful blonde girl's house that lived by the school. And I don't know how suave I was back in the day, but I tried to sweet talk her a little bit and asked her if she'd want to be my girlfriend. And thank God she said yes. So 39 years ago, she'd been hanging out by my side.
That is so incredible.
So that's what I think about on St. Patty's Day, not about green beer and drink until the green beer comes back out. But I think about that woman who has blessed my life for so many years. And I thank God for her each and every day.
How old were you?
Oh, then?
Yeah.
I was 14.
Wow.
Yep.
That is incredible.
So we've been married. We'll be celebrating our 30th anniversary this year. And, it's funny, as adults, I'll talk to people, yeah, we were together for 9 years before we got married. And people say, what took you so long? So, we started dating. I thought, you know what? This is going pretty good. Maybe we should finish middle school before we get married. Oh, yeah, that worked pretty good. And then I get to the next phase. Yeah, maybe we should finish high school before we get married. So let's give it a few more years. That's working out pretty good. And then I had the grand illusion of we should finish college before we got married. And as you may know, I tried to claim a 4-year degree in 5 years and didn't make it. So I left. I said, I got to get married. That's more important. And then that's definitely have a much better impact on my life over the last 30 plus years than a piece of paper down there in Eastern Michigan. But
I did not know that story.
Oh.
That is awesome. Wow. So what's so cool about this, dude, is I literally, one of the things I was thinking is like, outside of the drug testing, I wanted to know your story. And, and one of the things I always love asking is, especially with a family business, is how did you meet your spouse? And so for it to come back and it's like literally today's the anniversary date of when you went over and knocked on her door. That's phenomenal.
That's too funny. Yeah, it's been a while back, but yeah, I still remember it like yesterday, and I can still remember exactly what she said, but that'll be a different show. I won't repeat that here. But
that is so awesome. I want to go back and talking about the kids, and I just had this conversation with my son over the weekend. We were driving him to he coaches an 8th grade basketball team, so he's a junior in high school.
Oh, he does. I didn't know that. Good for him.
This is a really cool story in itself, and I don't want to steal all your time, but like we have a lot of time. So he's coaching this basketball team. So he volunteered to coach his basketball team with his girlfriend's cousin, who's the head coach of the team. And so he came on, and there's these two young guys are coaching this group of 8th graders. And Jackson told me at the beginning, he was all pumped up and excited that he's going to coach this team. And he was like, I'm going to teach them how to play hard. I'm going to teach them how to believe in themselves. I'm going to teach them how to like play hard defense. We're going to run the ball. And he's telling me all these things, and I'm like, I'm excited for him, but I'm also excited for him to learn like the leadership aspect. And when you dive into things, like there's things that you want from your team, and then there's like learning how to actually go get that, right?
Yes.
And so I'm like, he's coming in with all this enthusiasm. He's like, and they're gonna, they're gonna trust me and believe in me because I play, and I'm around their age, and they're gonna look up to me. And he had this whole perfect game plan of what was gonna happen. And he shows up, and it's like we went and watched his first week of games. He had 2 games, and he had inherited like the bad news bears of basketball players. Like this group of kids, like it's funny because thinking of Jackson in middle school when I coached his basketball teams, we had this kid on our team that was a super hard worker, but he wasn't very talented in basketball. But he was super hard worker, and I loved coaching this kid. Like I loved coaching this kid because you do whatever you'd ask him to do, and he got better and better as time went on. And Jackson hated playing with this kid. And I'm like, what's so funny about this and what I love to see in your maturity, Jackson, just out of the gates, is that you love these kids. I can see it already. You love coaching these kids. And back in like a couple of years ago, you hated Aiden but Aiden would be a rock star on this team. Like you'd be like the baller on this team, right? And he was like kind of laughing or whatever, but it's like really cool to see in that maturity. The next week, they beat the teams they played by over 20 points each. They didn't lose another game for the rest of the season. They won the championship on Saturday. They beat the team in the championship. They won by over 30 points in the championship game. Wow. This team did everything that Jackson said they were going to do. They worked hard. They rebounded. They ran at the ball. They played the most aggressive defense without fouling possible. They were constantly on fast breaks, just scoring hoops. They were by far the least talented team in the whole entire division, but they were beating teams by so much that they were starting games down by 20. Because they were beating teams by so much, they wanted to give the other teams hope that they could actually stay in the game. Right. And so there was a couple games where they started the games down by 20. And I'm like, that is so cool. Yeah. Like I'm so pumped up for him and that like leadership aspect, and him like he said everything he was going to do, and like the belief he gave those kids was just unbelievable. And we talk about changing your narrative, changing your story. Right. When somebody comes along and they say, I believe in you, it does something for you. And especially when you're in middle school and a kid in high school comes and he's a good basketball player and you think he's cool, and he comes around, puts his arm around your neck and says, I believe in you, is awesome. One of the kids ended up actually making his AAU tournament team, AAU team, wow. Like got cut from his middle school team, tried out at the end of the year for the AAU team and made it, and was all pumped up. Like super awesome, like the development. I say all that to go back to we're on the way, and he got a job at Kroger, and he's just a hardworking kid. So I think it comes down to we got to give ourselves credit that it's parents, and like that's the way you raise your kids a lot of times. Yes. You talk about both your kids and Mackenzie, and what is your son's name?
Dakota.
And Jackson's like talking about his job at Kroger, and he's like talking about, he's all excited about it, and all he's doing these things. And he's like, and all these people keep coming up to me and telling me, your parents did a good job. He was like, I've had like 5 different people tell me your parents did a good job. And then he starts telling me about his new, or like one of his managers named Sasha, who was like, do you know Sasha Clavon?
Boy, that name sure is familiar.
She was in boot camp a couple times, and she does the flooring. She was doing the flooring company.
Yeah, that's why it's okay.
She works at Kroger now, and she's one of his managers, and she was like, "You're my favorite." Like, and she doesn't know he's my son, which is super awesome. But he's like, "Yeah, my new manager Sasha was telling me how I'm her favorite, and like your parents must have did a good job." And I'm like, "That's my friend Sasha. That's amazing." I gotta call her still and be like, "I heard you like my son." But you're right. A lot of times we focus on. Like it's easy to focus on the lazy kids or those kids existed when I was a kid. Those kids existed when you were a kid. Like there's more distractions now and there's things like that. But there's also a whole lot of really good kids out there.
Yeah, there sure is. And it comes back to the raising. I mean, and not every kid's going to get raised perfectly. My wife's a perfect example of that. She grew up in an environment that, and I'm not going to tell much because it's her story, not mine to tell. But she did not grow up in a happy atmosphere. And just a quick glimpse into that, before she moved to Grass Lake, this little podunk school southwest of here is where I grew up at. Before she got to there, she'd gone to 12 different schools. And she got there to start her first day of 6th grade. So if that gives you an idea what kind of her home life was about. She didn't have a great upbringing. I think, obviously, if you have 2 parents that love you and raise you right, that's a huge impact. But I don't want to use that as an excuse either because you can figure it out, too, by getting around good people.
Absolutely.
But once we got together, not in junior high or not even high school or not even in college, but as we were both kind of became adults and we got on the same page together, so we're going to work our butts off to teach these kids right from wrong. We can teach them how to work, going to teach them how to have integrity, character, all the stuff that really mattered. And, still to this day, I tell my kids, remember your name. And I just let that soak in a little bit. I tell you, your last name is Strahan. What that means is you'll never be handed anything for the rest of your life. You're going to work for it. But doggone it, you're going to be so proud of that stuff that you work for. You're going to do the right thing no matter what. You're going to keep your head down. You're going to plow through the tough times. And because of that, you're going to be able to celebrate the good times. And, that's in every aspect of life. That's in relationships. That's in business. That's just in life in general. And I think the kids that are handed everything, that never have to work through things, they never get to suffer the tough times, I don't know how they can really enjoy the good times. So I think that their parents are really stealing that from them. We didn't have to worry about that choice because we were so broke. I couldn't afford to rub 2 nickels together when our kids were little, so I didn't have to worry about whether we were spoiling them or not. So that was pretty easy. And, we had some times in our life, you meet my wife, you think everything's been great her entire life. Man, we've had times where our life was so low, we would sit on the edge of a nickel and dangle our feet off the side. So we know what tough times are about. We've never been handed anything, and I didn't want to take that from my kids. I wanted to have them have some tough times, have some struggles. When you're living with your mom and dad as little kids and teenagers and even into high school, you always got somebody that's got your back to pick you up, dust you off. I didn't want them to get knocked down the first time in life when they're out on their own in their mid-20s. That's a tough time to learn those lessons. So we did a lot of things wrong, but what we did is we loved our kids. We didn't spoil them. Taught them right from wrong, and we kind of were always on the same game plan with my wife and I. And you combine that, getting in with a good group of people from church and teach them what really matters in life, where the real important things are. And it's just fun to see him grow up. Just like Jackson, you got to be so proud of him. And Sasha's awesome. I can't imagine when you get together, you finally catch with her and get to talk about how hard he works, what a great kid he is. That's going to be a time of your life, and you're going to remember that conversation for decades to come. And I had a couple of years back, it was only one time, it was short-lived, but like I said, we raised our kids different than everybody else. They didn't get everything. My son came to me one time and says, Dad, I just wanted to say thank you. You worked so hard to teach us right from wrong. You were such a good parent. You didn't let us be like all the other kids out there. And he says, and now, I'm in college. I'm looking around the way everybody else is behaving, the things they're doing on the weekends, the way they treat their parents, the way they treat the professors, and what they're doing just sitting in the hallway between classes. He says, I am so glad you didn't allow me to act like that you loved me enough to set a higher bar for my life. And I can't tell you how awesome that was to hear that. And he finished up. It was a pretty quick conversation, and it may be a long time before I hear that again, but doggone it.
You remember that for the rest of your life?
When that kid came to me and said, I want to build a business together with you, there was nothing that was going to keep me from doing it. I don't care if he's my son or not. I mean, he is such a good kid that I'd crawl through glass to do something like this with him and his sister and their mom too. I mean, it's just awesome to be able to be part of that. I can't believe I'm blubbering away over here. I'm not supposed to be doing this.
Did I not tell you this is one cool cat right here? Like this episode is worth it. You got me crying too. I'm a sucker for any like father son family story. So man, that is just awesome. And you segued right into my next question of how did you start this? And so tell me a little bit about that when Dakota came to you.
Yeah, that was pretty awesome. So I've spent kind of the preface this. I've spent the last 34 plus years with the CDL. I've been on the other side of this. I've done mostly construction, been in and around that for most of my life since I was a little kid. But anyways, a little while back, a couple of years ago now, I guess was the time frame, my son came to me and said, hey, I found this pretty cool looking franchise. I'd like you to check it out. So I just, I'll go check it out. At the time, I was working for the city of Chelsea. I had a few days off. I could cash in some PTO days. So yeah, your mom and I will check it out. So we flew down to San Antonio. And I knew Dakota, he's fantastic with numbers. I knew that he'd been through the books or whatever. He wouldn't even have wasted our time if it wasn't a good up and up business. So I was settled in on that. I just wanted to get the idea of the whole overall thing and then check the people out because he was talking about a franchise. And I've worked with a company before that was kind of tied in with a franchise, and I've seen a little bit from the good and the bad of that. So anyways, I went down to San Antonio with my wife. We kind of spent a day learning about the business. Again, realizing, a lot of it's kind of set in stone. You don't have to reinvent the wheel, but you can apply your practice a different way. So we checked it out, came home. A couple days later, he stopped over. Hey, what'd you think? It was pretty cool to go down to San Antonio, meet these people, check out the business. I said, I think there's a huge need for this. It's definitely something that's going to be turning the old standards upside down. There's some decent money to be made, as you know, or you went in and brought it to our attention. I said, but the biggest thing is, if you're going to be looking into something for a franchise, these people down in Texas, this family is the kind of people you want to team up with. Because if you're going to be hitching your wagon to them, you're going to be tied to them, win, lose, or draw. And these are the kind of people you want to hook up with. My son looked me in the eye and said, great, I'm glad to hear that. He puts his hand up on my shoulder. Here's what we're going to do. You're going to quit your job. We're going to buy a couple franchises, and you're going to build it. I thought, well, 52 years old. I don't know anything about any of this. Let's do it. So 6 months later, we opened up our place here right between Brighton and Howell, and we kind of hit the ground crawling. we got a little fast walk going there for a little bit, and now things are running along pretty good. So in a nutshell, that's kind of
That's so awesome. Were you at a point where you were ready and excited to leave your career and start something new?
Yeah, I'd say that was a pretty fair thing. We've had several businesses over the years, and this was definitely not on the radar. But anyway, in the past, we've done a lot of things that were very economy oriented. For years, I had a construction business. We did remodeling, finished basements, all that kind of stuff. We had a blast doing that. I love working with my hands. But, if the economy's tight, you're not finishing your basement. You're not putting an addition on the house, that kind of stuff. You just kind of batten down the hatches to go with it. Years later, we had I guess we like an adventure. We packed up and moved 500 miles from everyone and everything we'd ever known. We moved down to Middle Tennessee, and we decided we'd open up a pet supply store with a grooming shop. Now, the good thing was that my wife was a very accomplished dog groomer at the time. But I'd never even worked at a pet store. But literally, we hit the ground in Middle Tennessee, and to the day, 3 weeks later, we had a business open and running.
Wow.
And we actually had customers come in. It wasn't a lot of them. We had room for them, and then that started growing. And that we learned a lot of amazing things through that whole process. And then, again, I guess it was about 3 years later, things were coming along pretty good every month, going in the right direction. And then the whole housing market happened. And people were moving to Middle Tennessee at that time. In the little town we were in, 30 to 90 families a month moving into town. That's a fantastic time to be opening up a new business when the economy is booming. Mm-hmm. The downside is when everything fell apart, everybody just picked up their stuff and left. And, when you don't know how you're going to feed your family, you're not sure how you're going to pay your mortgage, you're not going to go get your dog groomed, you're not going to be buying holistic pet food, you're not going to buy new collars and leashes. So that kind of left us in a tough spot. we learned a lot from that. Sold everything we could, trying to get back to zero. A place I'd worked before, they said, man, if you ever want a job back, we'd love to have you come back. And so I picked up the phone, called them, and that was a pretty tough time because that was about Thanksgiving in '08. I mean, literally August 1st, just before that, 75% of our business vaporized into thin air overnight with that whole housing crash.
Wow.
So that was a pretty tough lesson. So I came back and stayed by myself. Well, not by myself. I stayed at my parents' house or whatever in their spare room for about 5 weeks, up to Thanksgiving, working construction outside and everything while my wife and the kids were down in Tennessee. And man, you talk about a tough time. That 5 weeks seemed like it was years. Obviously I couldn't fly back and forth. I couldn't drive back and forth. There just wasn't time or money to do that. And it was just one of the toughest times of my life. Like I said, I've been to a place where we were so low I could sit on the edge of a nickel and dangle my feet on the side, and that was one of them. But there's two choices. I can either wallow in self-pity and blame everybody else for what was going on, or I could pick up the mess I created and go on. It wasn't necessarily my fault, but, my choices led to that, which somebody told me years ago. He says, everybody you meet is exactly where they want to be in life. Like, what do you say? He says, well, you think about it. They're the only person that's made every decision that's put them exactly where they are.
Yep.
And that's kind of hard to swallow.
It is.
So I really had a hard time to process that. And then I can't tell you the amount of failure that I felt. I don't know if you've ever had a business that shut down not on your terms before, but and I don't want to say it was necessarily a pride thing, but sometimes people have a plan B. But when we moved down there, like I said, we were 500 miles from everyone and everything we'd ever known. I had no plan B. Either that store was going to make it, or I had no idea how I was going to feed my wife and kids. And so, anyways, came back to Michigan for the 6 week or 5 weeks. Did that, moved back, went back down there with them, and then basically we just packed them up, moved back, and kind of started all over again. And you start back at zero or sub-zero, wherever it was. I don't want to get into those details too much.
Yeah.
But so.
But you were able to rebuild.
Yeah. And that was really tough. I guess the point I wanted to get to is when you put every single thing you have, night and day, 7 days a week, into building something like that, sometimes I think I might have got a little hung up into, that store over there, that's ours, and look how good it's going, look at all the people coming through. That's kind of fun when it's booming, but when it's not, it's not so fun to point at that. And then I just kind of wondered what lessons I had to learn from that departure for that. But it literally took me years of mourning the loss of that business. So when we came back to Michigan, basically January 1st, 2009, I went back to a job for another company that I'd worked for in the past. And, we had some really good years. I did really well for them. It was a great company to work with, a lot of really good people. But deep down, I was torn with that. I want to work for myself.
You'd experienced it.
Yeah, I own a couple of businesses already. My wife had one before we had the store. And I just wanted so bad to have that business. But after something like that, it's just so hard to kind of pick up those broken pieces and put it back together. I'm like, well, man, my kids are in middle school now. They're in high school. They want to play travel ball. They want to do this stuff. They want to go to college. What if I try and it doesn't work again? So I was really trapped in, I'm going to say, that rut for longer than I probably should have been.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess the 40-minute answer to your one question of
that's perfect.
where did I want to be before we opened this business? I was ready in my head, wanting to open another business for probably 10 years before we opened Fastest Labs. But really emotionally, or whatever the right word is, I can't believe I'm talking about this, but it was such a hard loss that it took me years to mourn the loss of that business. And, I'm supposed to be the man. I'm the man to provide for these two beautiful kids and this amazing wife.
Yep.
And when you fail to accomplish that, it's tough. So I guess I kind of lived in the back of my mind. I just had that fear of what if it doesn't work. So it probably went way longer than it should have before I tried the next thing. But thank God that Dakota pulled that stool out from underneath me, got me moving again, and moving in the right direction. So it was a great kick in the right direction. And, there's still no guarantees that this is going to be everything we want it to be. And, it could all end tomorrow. so be it. That's obviously not what my goal. I work my butt off night and day, fighting, scraping, clawing to make this happen, to do the right thing, to treat people well. But at the end of the day, I got 2 great kids. I got an amazing wife, and we would do anything to look out for each other and take care of each other. And that's way more important than making a living. There's always going to be jobs out there. So, but man, I just get so geeked up when I think about, all right, now that's behind me. Let's put that in the past. Let's focus on tomorrow. Let's focus on next week, next month. Where are we going to be? Where are we going to go? And kind of in those terms, I just recently went to a regional conference for Fastest Labs, and you get a kick out of this. So we meet with all the people along kind of the eastern coast and up into Michigan area, and all these business owners. And as you can imagine, it's a franchise, so you're going to have all walks of life. So you got people that have been in the medical industry, you have lawyers, you have captains of industry that own these franchises, and then you have a few people like me, just average Joe, just everyday walk of life, no particular set of skills. I'm going to grind it out and make it happen. And all these people are finding success through this franchise. You know, they're doing it in different ways. Some people are doing it really fast. Some people are just kind of a slow whatever. But I just think it's so cool that the family and I can jump in and we can do this. And we don't have to be amazing. We don't have to be something we're not. We're not trying to pretend to do what the lawyers are doing because they have a whole set of different connections and people in their life. They have influence in different things. But we're just out there with people like us, the working class of America, the people I love, the blue-collar, red-blooded Americans that want to work hard. They want to provide for their family. They want to have a safe environment, and they want their community to be a better place. And we're out there each and every day rubbing elbows with these people, taking care of them and letting them do their job in a safer way and just loving on people.
Stu, man, I have a lot of awesome guests on. This is my favorite episode in a really, really long time. I can't express enough how much I appreciate the vulnerability and you sharing those stories. And, you probably know about me. I talk about all the time, stories are data with soul. And we have people that are listening to this that are in the same shoes as you, and I've had guests that have come on that, the great ones, when they go in, they share the vulnerability like you, because there is the risk, there is that other side. There's I'm the man and I'm supposed to be taking care of my family, and there's a real grief with this whole entire process. And you hit on one of my really big topics that I love talking about, because I think just vulnerability for men in general is really, really tough. And to have 2 guys come on that are comfortable crying and, and telling emotional stories and being emotional and loving on our family. I think that's huge. And I think it's a huge example to share with the world, because man, if we could love on each other and support each other as men through this, and even just the world could even understand some of the pressures that we put on ourselves from that standpoint of this is my family. I got to take care of them. And if I didn't take care of them, that whole psychology, man, it's huge. And it's beautiful that not only did you get back on the horse, so to speak, but it's your family that pulled you aside and poked you and said, let's do this.
Yeah, I don't know if he did it intentionally or if it was just, I'm thinking it was. He's a pretty smart kid. and it's pretty cool to think that out of all the people in the world that he wanted to go into business with, he approached us and brought it. And I think I tried to mention earlier that, even if he wasn't my kid, even if he was just, I knew this 26-year-old, 27-year-old, whatever he was at the time, and hey, you want to go in business together? If I knew him like a little bit what I know of him, absolutely, I'd be in on that. So just a bonus that we're family. But yeah, being vulnerable and sharing feelings is definitely outside of my wheelhouse. I grew up around a lot of family on my mom's side of the family. These were all farmers, construction workers, concrete guys, and feelings aren't something that you share. Even if you smash a digit off with a hammer or a knife on a job site, you say, ouch, you wrap a piece of tape around it, and you keep on going. So yeah, this is definitely kind of new for me. So I don't know if I want to thank you or
is that new with me specifically, or is it new, or is it something that you're going through in life in general?
Well, I don't know. I think that's a good question. I guess I have shared a couple of stories more recently about some of a little bit of this, but I kind of shared a lot more here about than I was expecting to. I thought we were going to talk business, we are going to talk shop, but somehow you said just the right thing and just got out of the way and let me go.
It's my superpower. I don't know. I don't even. It's like just being able to like do. You know, that's why I love about these conversations. Is a lot of times you have no idea where they're going to go. I didn't know that about you.
Yeah, it's been interesting. I didn't know I was going there either, but yeah, feelings are definitely not something that we share in our family, and it's kind of, maybe it's an age thing, I don't know, but it's kind of snuck out a little bit. But yeah, you definitely pulled the rope out, got a lot more out than I was expecting.
I love it, man. I'm sitting and I'm trying to focus on what you're saying in the present as you're going, because I'm like, oh my God, that clip is going to be the most amazing clip I've had in a long time. Like, oh man, that one where you're talking about crawling through the glass. I'm like, oh, I'm thinking about cutting the clips out while you're talking.
That's good. I'm thinking about cutting a bunch out too.
This is just beautiful. And again, you know, it's those stories that, we think, and there's so many people I've sat across from, and they're telling me this amazing story, and just like what I'm doing right now, I'm like gushing all over your stuff. Like, we got to share this with the world, and you're like, whoa, we got to cut this out.
Yeah.
But like, then you share that stuff, and people are like, oh my God, that, like, I want to do business with Stu because he's that person, and that's the whole point.
Well, that's cool, because you know, I've never been able to be very good about hiding who I am or whatever. I just, what you see is pretty much what you get.
Yep.
I try to behave, but I don't try that hard. But if you want a real person, yeah, I got that covered.
Real followers don't change the world.
Yeah, there is that. I make a mental note of that.
They don't, you know, like it's I'm a fence tester.
Okay.
You know, in the sense that like, I had a mentor that used to always say this. I'm like, it's so true. It was like, go and do it and then ask for forgiveness later.
Yeah, I've pretty much lived my whole life by that. Yeah, it's a lot easier to ask for forgiveness than it is for permission.
Yeah. Yeah.
I apply that in just about every aspect of my life, whether it be growing up as a kid. And boy, I asked for a lot of forgiveness from a lot of people. And then spent a lot of years coaching too. We did some unique stuff there too. But yeah, I kind of taught that to a lot of kids too growing up. But
what were you coaching?
I was coaching a lot of baseball before we even had the kids, before we were even married. And that was a lot of fun too. And it's funny you mentioned, you know, the group of kids your son was coaching, and kudos to him. That is so awesome for him to do all that. But you know, this was 30 plus years ago. I had this group of kids, and I called them my little dirt bags. And I thought that was a compliment. And since then, I've actually even named some baseball clubs the dirt bags and stuff. So I guess it kind of caught on or whatever. But these guys were just a bunch of little ragtag kids out of Grass Lake. Just, they didn't have an amazing set of skills at this point. They were just young middle school. But you know what? They would go out there and they would play their guts off. They would get down and dirty. They would do the job, whatever they had to do. And, you know, after I got to coach those kids for a couple of years, man, I just loved them. My guys like family. But it's funny because we got invited to this big baseball tournament in Battle Creek. And, you know, you think of the Bad News Bears, and they get all coached up and all this great victory. We went marching into Battle Creek. And then we looked at all the teams that we were going to be playing. I'm like, oh, my gosh. I think at the time I was like 25 years old. I'm like, I'd be the smallest kid on every team that we played against here. And all these guys, I mean, they were just little itty-bitty guys. Every one of them was slow to grow, I guess, or whatever, because a couple years later, they all shot way up. But, man, we went over there. Okay, we're going to show these kids. Now, man, we got our clocks clean. We got them thrown out, and we got beat up so bad. But you know what? They never quit. They never gave up.
Yeah.
They never slowed down one step. I said, you know, that's what life's all about. Sometimes you're just not going to get where you want to go. But that can't stop you. That can't slow you down. They can't take the fight out of you, because you know what you came here for. And that's to be as good as you can, to play as well as you can. And, you know, what a great lesson for life for those little kids. Sometimes you're just going to get beat down, knocked down, and you just can't get to where you want to, but never let anybody stop you from trying. So
it's those experiences. And that's what I love about sports so much, is like, how do you teach grit? You know, and I think you talked about it earlier as far as your parenting style with your kids, is you let them experience the losses, because if you, and it's so hard as a parent to do that, because you want to avoid them, help them avoid the pitfalls that you did. Oh. There's been times where I've like told my son, like told stories or tried to help him avoid things that I went through, but he had to fall in that same hole in order to find a way to get out of the hole.
Absolutely. You know, And then the first thing people want to do is they want to start digging. That's not the way to get out of a hole.
Yeah.
Digging is what got you in there. You got to start climbing to get out of there. And, I'm sure there's a lot of great analogies to that, but sometimes in life you just can't dig. You got to climb.
Yeah. But we learn so much more from our failures. And that's why even when we talk about like just going and doing and taking action and starting the franchise and putting yourself in a situation where, you're in a town where you don't know anybody, in an industry you don't know about, because there's so many people standing on the sidelines waiting for the sure thing. They're waiting for the answer. They're waiting for the clarity. They're waiting for when the time is right. And the time will never be right. They'll never have all the answers. Because you learn from going out, jumping in.
Right. Absolutely. And sometimes it's a tough lesson, but it's definitely a good way to learn. I get some buddies of mine still to this day. They say, I can't believe you did that. So what's that? And then I'll say, the 7 years before we opened up Fastest Labs, I was actually working for the city of Chelsea. Great little town down there, a lot of phenomenal people. And it was still kind of construction stuff, we're repairing roads and taking care of parks and all that kind of stuff. So it was kind of neat.
Yeah.
A lot of snow removal, that kind of stuff, because I don't know if you've been through Chelsea in the wintertime, but the only thing white you're going to see in the streets down there is the salt. They like it high and dry, baby. And it takes a lot of work to make that happen. But that being said, I worked for a small municipality, so, we had some pretty good benefits. I made decent wages, whatever. I'm not going to knock them for that.
Yeah.
And I worked a lot of construction and everything, so benefits were really new to me. So I was kind of enjoying that the best I could. But anyways, my buddy said, how did you give up all those benefits? The government paycheck, you'd work your way up to seniority, kind of a very unstable economy. Yeah, a very unstable economy. Definitely not the best time. Like you said, if you wait for the perfect time, it's never going to happen.
Yep.
All the stuff you had going for you, why would you give all that up just to start a new business? And what if it doesn't work? That's a very fair question. And I guess if you're wired to just look at things differently, and I don't want to say it's good or bad, but some people are wired to be self-employed entrepreneurs, whatever you want to call it. Some people are wired to be fantastic employees. They love going in every day. They love somebody telling them what to do.
Yep.
They love punching out at the end of the day, and they don't have to give it a second thought. And then there's a lot of people in between. But it's kind of the old adage of trying to shove a square peg into a round hole. And you can push as hard as you want and bang on it and everything else, but it's just not going to happen. So I was content for a while. It was a nice place to kind of recover, pick up the pieces, recover from my losses from the last business deal that didn't end the way I wanted it to. And we had some great benefits. I learned some new skills, met some good people, but deep down inside, I was just burning to do something again. I just wasn't sure what it was. And I'm very thankful that my son found this and came along, because I promise you I would have never picked this in a million years. This was not even
on the radar.
Not even on the radar, man. But and then even when we got started, like, whatever, we're going to do this. It's going to be cool, working with the family and everything. But I had no idea that I was going to love it the way I do now. And every day, every month, we get into it more and more. And I just realize how fun it is to have impact on people's lives and to just catch them off guard when they think, they have an idea what it's going to be when they walk in the door. And then we have people with some pretty tough situations. There's, unfortunately, not everybody we test is, for a new job or whatever. There's some recovery programs and stuff out there. And they're used to be treated a certain way. And then they come into our place and find it very refreshing to be very different. And we just want to help them through that recovery program with the random testing and that sort of stuff. And like I mentioned with the DNA testing, there's some unique situations there. We've had a couple of situations where a young lady comes in with a baby, and then we do some DNA tests for that. And then a couple of days later, another gentleman comes in to test to find out if that's the father or not. And, that's not an ideal situation in life. But the fact is, we live in a fallen world, and that's going to happen. Not every family is going to be set in those perfect steps the way the Bible would like us to, which doesn't make our life perfect. It just makes it a little bit easier if we follow the rules. But those rules I do try to follow, but still fall short. But that being said, you just never know who's going to walk into the place from one day to the next. And it's just so much fun to have a positive impact and change people's view of how they should be treated, how they think they're going to be treated in some tough situations.
What, going back just a little bit, what were some of the lessons you learned from the last business that you were able to carry into this, or like even to add on to that, how did you know it was time?
Man, you're asking some good questions.
That's what I do.
I was hoping you'd allow me just a couple softballs, but
Once I know you go deep, we're going to keep going deep.
yeah, I stepped into that one, didn't I? I should have quit digging. I don't know if I did know if it was right. To be honest with you, I have no guarantees. I have no, and still, just almost a year and a half into it, I still don't know for sure. But man, I'm in for it. I'm up for the ride to see what we can do with it. And I just feel like we're very blessed to be able to do this, to meet the people I've met around the Howell and the Brighton and the Heartland areas here. And, I'd like to say it's going to work. I'm pretty sure it's going to work. But if it doesn't, I'm not going down without a fight. We're going after it with everything we got. But I don't have any signs. I wish I did. I wish I had this vision or something. But I don't know how to answer that.
Yeah, no, just like it felt right. It felt right for you at the time. Like I think family and bringing it together and
and I guess to kind of go a little bit deeper too. That before we made that decision, I prayed night and day, prayed my guts out. And, I don't know where most people's faith is, but I know mine. I believe there's a God that created the heavens and the earth, and I am thankful that I get to serve Him each and every day, and I want to do my best to make Him smile, make Him proud. And then, of course, my family next. But I prayed a lot before we made this decision. I know I made it sound like it was just a quick decision, but it had taken a little bit of time, a few steps. But and I don't know how you pray or other people pray, but I said, God, if this is what we're supposed to do, I'd like you to open up some doors so we can move forward and make this thing happen. And I think it happened pretty quick. And I said, God, if this is not what I'm supposed to do, I have no idea if this is going to work or not, but I'm willing to take that chance. But, if it's not, and it's not going to be good for my family and I, please close the doors and let me know very emphatically that I'm not supposed to do this. And it just seemed like the doors opened up. And, every time the door will open up, I'd walk in. The next door would open up, I'd walk in. And again, it hasn't been perfect. It hasn't been exactly what I thought or hoped, but I think I've learned a whole lot. I think I've developed some pretty good skills through so far, doing everything in my life different than what I've done for the first 52 years. And, I think God's blessed it, and we're definitely going in the right direction. And kind of to that point, I think I shared this story with you a couple weeks ago, but we opened up in Ann Arbor about 2.5 months ago. A friend of ours here in the Brighton area, I want to introduce you to a guy that has a business down there. I think you guys would hit it off. So I had him into the office. We hung out for a couple hours. In the first week, we weren't interrupted by any clients walking through. That was for sure. So we got to hang out, shoot the breeze. We talked about our business and his business. And then he said, I got to get going. But before I go, I just want to throw this out there. He says, God called me a while back to start a prayer group. And we want to pray for for-profit businesses in this area. I'm like, can you say that again? I'm not sure I heard that right. So he repeated it. I'm like, he says, and if you would like us to pray for you, he says, I'll send you a link on the email and you can just kind of give a little information and we'll let you know when we pray and that kind of stuff. I'm like, do people say no to this? So you and a group of guys and gals are just going to pray for me and my business and for success for nothing? So absolutely. He says, yeah, but not everybody says yes. I thought, well, sign me up. Let's do this. So I'm like,
what do you have to lose?
Right. So we talked a little bit about that. He sent me the link, and I don't know, my tech skills, it might have taken me a few days to figure it out and get it signed in. But, that was just before Christmas. And the cool thing was, so I got that signed in. So that Monday he prayed, him and his team prayed for us. And then Tuesday I received the email, hey, we prayed for you. We prayed for these specific things. We use these verses. They have a very structured system that they do on a weekly basis. Wednesday, I can't remember if it was Christmas Eve or New Year's. Either way, we had the Wednesday off. So then the very first thing, Thursday morning, I got a phone call out of the blue from this huge global company. And they said, hey, yeah, this is Amy, and we're wondering if you'd want to do some hiring events. It's like, well, what does that mean? What are you looking at? And she gave me some details, and man, my eyes lit up. I didn't know how to answer because I didn't know that this was a thing. So I said, if you could just maybe email me the details, let me work on this a little bit. I'll get right back with you. And she sent me the events, and then they wanted to hire like almost, well, I can't remember what it was, a whole bunch of people. So they wanted to do this all in one morning where people come in, they get their interview, they get their drug test, they do a physical fitness test, all this kind of stuff, all in one roof to get people in and out in a couple hours. And to make a short story long, as I was reading this email, ding, another one showed up. Oh, by the way, we want to do one the following week. Like, oh, absolutely. So we scrambled and we got some numbers and put a bid in for it. She says, all right, yeah, we've accepted that. And then we started doing those two, and the people at the company up in Saginaw loved us. And then I get another email. They got another one coming and another one. And we're just up there working hard to take care of business, do things right, just building relationships with the people up there, treating the people well that are coming in. Same thing, like, well, I've never had an experience like this with a drug test before. It's like, well, yeah, hopefully you mean that as a compliment. I'm going to go with that. So, and long story short, or short story long, wherever I'm at with this, I reached out, hey, you got any other companies that do hiring events anywhere in Michigan? We're happy to travel. And then a couple of days later, she sends an email with the list of dates for 14 more of these hiring events. And I don't know how to put this into words for people that don't understand our industry, but when you're hiring anywhere from 50 to 200 people in a day and doing those drug tests, I mean, that's a huge blessing. And this was a company that, we had no chance to work with. There was no reason for them to call us. But I attribute it to that prayer group that, like I said, Monday they prayed, Tuesday they told me they prayed, Wednesday the day was off, Thursday the first phone call I got was, hey, out of the blue, would you want to come do this? Which led into 16, 18 different events of making pretty good money, which is very important for a new business.
Wow.
And to be able to do that a day at a time, 2-3 days a month from January through July, that is a huge blessing. And I thank God for that each and every day. So
I love the God stories on these episodes too, and I think faith is a big part of that entrepreneurship journey. And have you read the book The Alchemist?
I have not.
Okay, it's very. It's surprising. Most of my guests have not read this book. I ask almost everybody because it's along that same lines. It's essentially God opening the doors for you when you're going out and pursuing your personal legend or your purpose. And when you go out on that limb and you go after it, the door is open. Though, like you said, it's not like you're just climbing to the top. It's like a little, this door opens and then you get stuck here, and then another door opens and you learn a lesson and you fall down a little bit and another door opens, and but those doors are opening and the people are coming into your life that are, again, opening those doors because you're on the right path. And that's what the book is essentially about. A really good book. I highly recommend it, but that's my synopsis of it.
It sounds like a pretty cool book. And, I've learned for years that people say, all leaders are readers. And I love the idea of that. And I try to read on a regular basis, but I am such a slow reader. It's a painful thing. So I heard you on your podcast a couple weeks ago talk about listening to the books. I'm like, now there's a novel idea.
It's huge because you can do it when you're on the road a lot. You're coming from Grass Lake to Howell to Ann Arbor while you're on the road. You can pop something in. And then it also puts you in the right mindset too, especially if you're going and knocking doors or making calls or doing those kind of things.
Yeah, definitely spend some time making calls and knocking on doors.
The business generator, right? Like you're the one that has to, between the two locations. That's interesting in itself.
Yeah, it's kind of fun on those very rare occasions where somebody calls, hey, I'd like to do business with you. I'm like, I think, is this one of my buddies? Hey, Jared, is this a prank? What's going on here? But, you make so many phone calls, you knock on so many doors, you grind it out for every little inch you get.
Yep.
It's just so fun when actually somebody calls you on the other side, but I don't plan on slowing that down anyway. So, but yeah, I just love when people call us back. But, we make fun of it too, going and knocking on doors, have a good time, meet some really good people out there. And,
absolutely.
Some people just want to close the door in your face, but you know what? Most people out there, if you treat them well, they just want to hang out and make a new friend too.
Yep.
And I feel pretty spoiled that that's kind of my job description. I tell people I got the best job in the world. I get to go out all day, make new friends. And if they want to hang out, I can make their life a little bit easier and a little bit safer. Seems like a pretty good gig to me.
Man, that's awesome. Stu, this has been a phenomenal conversation. I've really enjoyed it. How was it? Was it okay? Did we get through it okay?
I think so. I think you got a lot of cutting to do to make this make sense to anybody. But you and the guys behind the glass, man, you better get those scissors sharp.
I don't think there's very much cutting at all. I don't know if there's any cutting. Cameron's like thumbs up and shaking his head. He agrees with me. I'm like, I don't blow smoke. This is one of my favorite episodes I've had in quite some time. And just some of the stuff that people are going to get to hear out of this episode, I think is extremely powerful and impactful. And on the same token, I think that people, as they hear the story, will pull more into you, which is my goal. So
that would be cool. I would like that.
My pleasure. So, man, Stu, thank you again for making the time and coming down here. I know you're on call and you're busy being the guy between two locations, and so this has been awesome that you took that time and walked away from a busy retail location and came here.
Well, man, I sure appreciate the invite, and I wouldn't have missed it for anything. It's always a great time anytime I get a chance to hang out with you, and I don't know how I let you pull me into some of this stuff, but I appreciate you for it, and it's been a good time. Yeah, it's kind of a lot going on here with the lights and the cameras and all that stuff going on, but definitely not my cup of tea. It's funny, we put one of those clips on that you cut from the other podcast, and a guy emailed me, "That was a pretty good clip. Was that like a memorized script that you put out there?" I said, "I don't think you know me very well, because you could give me 6 words on a script and I could sit right here and I'm going to blow it. But, if you're just going to ask me a question and let me talk, that's going to happen. But yeah, there's not much scripted in my life, good, bad, or indifferent. That's just the way I roll.
And that's that's it, right? And it's catching people, like getting out of our heads, not having the script, like breaking beyond that surface. Today we broke beyond the surface,
We did.
Whether you wanted to or not, I got it out of you. But we break, and that's where all the magic is. That's where, and it's awesome. When I have people that listen to the show and they're like, wow, like Abigail Hathaway. Do you know Abigail?
I do not.
She hits a lot of the chamber events too, and she's with Washtenaw Community College. And I met Abigail from a marketing mashup, and she just seems like this really, I say this in the nicest way, naive, sweet, innocent young lady that has not experienced the world. Like, she hasn't been let down by society. Like, she just is like in this bubble. Like, when you meet her, she's super positive. I say that all in a great way. I sat down and she came to my office and told me her story. And she was in my office for like 3 hours telling me about how she was homeless, how she's basically a ward of the state. She's never had parents. She's like went from foster home to foster home. And she just had this crazy, insane life where no naivety, no sheltered, no bubble. And it's like really cool. And we talked about God and her faith and how even as she was homeless, she didn't go without, even as people would come up and give her things and do these. And it was just a really cool episode. But then I'd have all these people come up to me and after listening to that and talk about how they were inspired and moved, Right. I had somebody that came on, asked to be on the podcast because they wanted to tell their story because they were inspired and moved by her. And just, it's awesome. Really cool when people listen to you, like, they're going to be motivated. They're going to be moved.
Well, that's cool. Yeah, I'd love to help motivate people. Because like I said, tell my kids, it doesn't matter what your name is. Nobody's going to hand you stuff. If you want to do something, you want to make a difference in people's lives. I know that's your line. I don't mean to be taking it from you, but...
You say it so well. I didn't even know it was mine.
the difference makers. But, anybody can do that. It doesn't matter what your background is. Doesn't matter if you've been knocked down. Doesn't matter if you've been picked up. Doesn't matter if you're rich or poor. Every one of us is created in the image of God. He loves us. He wants the best for us. We may not have always gotten what we wanted, but we find out one way or another we got what we need. And He'll point us in the right direction. If we get out of our own way sometimes, that's the best thing we can do, and see where God sends us, and wherever you're planted, bloom, and see what comes out of it.
Yeah, man, Stu, that's a mic drop moment. Just when I doesn't think it gets any better, man. Thank you again so much.
Thank you, Jason. I appreciate it.
My absolute pleasure.